Russia is not just another country on the map. It is the largest country on Earth, stretching across Eastern Europe and North Asia, crossing 11 time zones, and touching 14 land neighbors. That scale is difficult to imagine because Russia is both European and Asian, both deeply urban and enormously remote. Its capital, Moscow, is the largest city and metropolitan center in Europe, while St. Petersburg remains one of the continent's great cultural capitals. Yet beyond these cities are forests, tundra, mountains, rivers, oil fields, gas reserves, and territories so vast that geography itself has shaped Russian history. Russia's size has given it security, resources, and strategic depth, but it has also made government, infrastructure, defense, and identity unusually complicated. Human life in what is now Russia goes back to the Lower Paleolithic, but the roots of the Russian state are usually traced to the rise of the East Slavs. Between the 3rd and 8th centuries, Slavic communities became increasingly important across Eastern Europe. By the 9th century, these communities were connected to the formation of Kievan Rus, a medieval political and cultural world centered around trade routes, river systems, and early urban settlements. Kievan Rus mattered because it created a foundation for later Russian, Ukrainian, and Belarusian history. It was not modern Russia, but it helped shape the language, religion, ruling traditions, and historical memory that later states would claim as part of their origin story. One of the decisive turning points came in 988, when Kievan Rus adopted Orthodox Christianity from the Byzantine Empire. This was more than a religious choice. It linked the region to the cultural and spiritual world of Constantinople, brought new forms of art, writing, law, architecture, and ceremony, and helped define a civilizational identity distinct from Catholic Western Europe. Orthodoxy became deeply woven into Russian political imagination. Later rulers would present Moscow as a defender of true Christianity after the fall of Constantinople. This religious inheritance helped give Russian statehood a sense of sacred mission, which influenced culture, monarchy, diplomacy, and later arguments about Russia's special place between Europe and Asia. After Kievan Rus fragmented, power shifted over time toward Moscow. The Grand Principality of Moscow gradually gathered surrounding Russian lands and became the center of a new political order. This process was slow, strategic, and often violent. Moscow's rulers used diplomacy, military pressure, marriage alliances, tax collection, and religious legitimacy to expand their authority. In 1547, Ivan IV was crowned Tsar, creating the Tsardom of Russia. The title of Tsar carried imperial weight, suggesting a ruler with authority comparable to ancient Caesars. This marked the rise of a more centralized Russian state, one that would increasingly define itself through expansion, autocratic rule, and control over enormous territories. Expansion became one of the defining patterns of Russian history. Through conquest, annexation, settlement, and exploration, Russia moved across forests, steppe lands, Siberia, and eventually toward the Pacific. By the early 18th century, under Peter the Great, Russia was transformed into a formal empire. In 1721, it was proclaimed the Russian Empire, and over time it became the third largest empire in history. This expansion brought enormous resources and strategic reach, but also a vast diversity of peoples, religions, languages, and local identities under imperial rule. Russia's empire was therefore not only a story of power, but also of constant tension between central authority and the challenge of governing difference. Imperial Russia wanted to be recognized as a major European power, yet it remained distinct from Western Europe in many ways. St. Petersburg, built as a window to Europe, symbolized the ambition to modernize, westernize, and compete with the great powers. At the same time, Russia's social structure remained marked by autocracy, aristocratic privilege, and until the 19th century, serfdom. The empire produced extraordinary literature, music, science, and architecture, but it also struggled with reform, inequality, censorship, and political repression. This contradiction became increasingly unstable. Russia was powerful, culturally brilliant, and militarily significant, but beneath the surface, pressure was building for radical change. That pressure exploded in 1917. The Russian Revolution abolished the monarchy and opened the way for the creation of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, the first socialist state. The revolution was followed by civil war, violence, famine, and the destruction of the old imperial order. In 1922, Russia became the largest and most important republic inside the newly formed Soviet Union. The Soviet project claimed to build a new society based on socialist principles, but it also created a powerful one-party state. Under Joseph Stalin, rapid industrialization turned the Soviet Union into a major industrial and military power, but at a terrible human cost, including mass repression and millions of deaths. World War II transformed Russia and the Soviet Union permanently. The Eastern Front was the largest and deadliest theater of the war in Europe. Soviet forces absorbed immense losses, fought major battles such as Stalingrad and Kursk, and played a decisive role in defeating Nazi Germany. This victory became central to Russian national memory. It reinforced the idea of sacrifice, resilience, and military greatness. But the war also left deep trauma, destroyed cities, devastated populations, and millions dead. After 1945, the Soviet Union emerged not as a ruined state, but as a superpower, with control or influence across much of Eastern Europe and a central role in shaping the post-war world. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union competed with the United States for global influence. This was not just a military rivalry. It was ideological, scientific, cultural, and economic. The Soviet Union promoted communism and state planning, while the United States promoted capitalism and liberal democracy. The competition produced nuclear arms races, proxy wars, intelligence battles, and immense technological achievements. Soviet science shocked the world by launching Sputnik, the first human-made satellite, and later sending the first human into outer space. These achievements showed that Russia, through the Soviet Union, could challenge the most advanced powers on Earth and shape humanity's future beyond the planet itself. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and the Russian Federation emerged as its successor state. This was a massive geopolitical break. Russia inherited the Soviet seat as a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, much of the Soviet military legacy, and the world's largest nuclear arsenal. But the 1990s were also marked by economic shock, political instability, weakened institutions, and a constitutional crisis in 1993. A new constitution created a semi-presidential republic, but Russia's democratic experiment remained fragile. Many Russians experienced the post-Soviet transition not as liberation, but as disorder, poverty, lost status, and national humiliation. Since 1999, Russian politics has been dominated by Vladimir Putin. Under his leadership, the state re-centralized authority, restored parts of Russia's global influence, and used energy wealth, security institutions, media control, and nationalism to strengthen the regime. At the same time, Russia has experienced democratic backsliding and is widely described as authoritarian. Independent media, opposition politics, civil society, and human rights have come under pressure. This political direction is important because it affects not only domestic life, but also foreign policy. A more centralized and confrontational Russia has been willing to use military force to defend what it sees as its strategic interests. Modern Russia remains a great power, but a complicated one. It has enormous energy and mineral resources, especially oil and natural gas, and its economy ranks among the world's largest by nominal and purchasing power measures. It also has major military capabilities, high defense spending, and the largest nuclear weapons stockpile. Russia has been involved in conflicts including Georgia in 2008 and Ukraine since 2014, with the annexation of Crimea and the full-scale invasion of 2022 drawing international condemnation and reshaping European security. At the same time, Russia is home to major cultural heritage, including dozens of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. To understand Russia is to understand a country where geography, empire, trauma, resources, authoritarian politics, and global ambition are all inseparable. If you found this helpful, Please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.